So I'll get started on our presentation and then we will follow up with the Q&A at the end. So sort of the outline of what we're going to look at today is we're going to start off by looking at the general application process, which is choosing a college, the personal statement, the ESAT, and the interview, followed by looking a little bit at what the course structure of engineering is like at Cambridge, because it's slightly different to some other universities. And then we'll finish off with a Q&A. So like I said before, keep submitting in your questions. You would have been emailed the link, or it should also be in the chat. So first off, when you start doing your application, you will have to choose a college. So there's lots of ways you can go about this. Some people choose to, for example, do an open application, which means they don't have to pick a college at all, and they will get assigned a college by the university during their application. Or if you would like to pick a college, most people do tend to. You can think about a lot of things. So the colleges are spread out throughout the city of Cambridge. Some are more centralised and some are slightly further out. So it entirely depends on the location of the college. Some people try to pick a college that is closer to their department, so it means they have to walk less or cycle less. Other people prefer being right in the city centre, or you might prefer somewhere that's slightly more quiet and less touristy and decide that you want slightly further out college, but it's completely up to you. There is also the option of a women-only and non-binary college. So Cambridge has two colleges that are women and non-binary only, which is Newnham and Medwards. So if that is a preference that you would like, you could opt for one of those colleges. All of the colleges also vary a lot in terms of size. There are some very, very big colleges, such as King's or Trinity and John's, or some smaller ones, such as I'm from Sydney, Sussex, which is a much smaller college compared to them. There are also particular facilities sometimes in certain colleges, such as a society that you might want to join or a sport. Also, some colleges might offer specific scholarships for sports or music. So if that's something that interests you, all of this information would be available on the college's website, or you could email the individual college to find out a bit more about them. I'd also say in terms of picking a college, see if you can try and come out to Cambridge, have a look around the city and have a visit with some of them, because a lot of the time, sometimes you just sort of feel the vibe of the college that you'd love to be in. There are also virtual tours and lots of information on their websites if you can't manage to come into Cambridge. There's also lots of statistics available online about admission statistics on the number of students being admitted. My advice for that is, of course, it's all available out there, so do have a look at it, but I don't focus too much on it, because at the end of the day, a specific statistic won't necessarily increase or decrease your chance of getting into a college. But at the end of the day, all of the colleges at Cambridge are really wonderful, and no matter where you go, you will meet lots of wonderful people, and everyone ends up loving whatever college they end up at. So the next step of your application process is the personal statement. So this is something that is obviously a very new setup from this year. So a lot of the advice I'm giving you today, and a lot of the advice that the other students on here will be giving, will be sort of based off of our experiences, but please sort of bear in mind this was based on when we sort of did our personal statements, and I would still recommend looking at the UCAS websites or the university website for more concrete advice. But this is very much our sort of advice and perspective from when we've written our personal statements. So the key thing is, in your personal statements, instead of writing a long personal statement, you now have to answer 3 specific questions, which I listed here, which is, oh, sorry, I've just realized I have moved the slide. My apologies. So why would you like to study this course or subject? How have your qualifications and studies helped you to prepare for the college course or subject? And what else have you done outside of education? So in each of these questions, you sort of want to tend to try and look at different aspects of what you've done, and try and sort of look paragraph your paragraphs so that they sort of focus on a certain topic at a time. So some important things to try and discuss in these questions would be supercurricular activities. So these are things like relevant books, articles, documentaries, so anything that links strongly to your academic interests and ambitions and shows why you want to study a subject that you're applying for. I'd also say potentially talking about some future goals. So talking about potentially how you see this degree and this course um, going towards your future career path and what you'd like to do later on in life. Another also thing that might be to discuss is skill development. So rather than just saying that you did a project or you read a book or whatever, focus more keenly on the skills that you gained from that project or whatever you learned that sort of applies to your course. So skills such as research, data analysis, project management, or other technical skills that you've gained from doing any of those projects or tasks or research subjects. And then finally, specifically in the last question, looking at things outside of education, you can spend that question then talking about your soft skill, your hobbies. That's where you can sort of talk about your sports, your sort of student societies, all of that, things that aren't necessarily academia related, but definitely show off your personality and some skills that you've gained. I think all in all, when you're writing your personal statement, really try to think about the structure and the flow of it. You don't want a paragraph to have 10 different points that don't really link together. Ideally, you want everything to sort of flow together and have like a clear logical progression going through it. So it's easier for whoever's reading your personal statement to understand it. And it means that you can focus on certain bits for longer and talk a bit more about exactly what you learned from something rather than just listing everything you've done. So following on from doing your personal statement and choosing your college, you will then have to sit the ESAT exam, which is the Engineering Science Admission Test. Now, this test is for both Cambridge and Imperial Engineering and will take place in around mid-October, and it is a requirement to do. Your school should sign you up for it, but make sure that this is done well in advance and that this will be done to ensure that your application is processed correctly. So the test is multiple choice and it consists of 3 different sections, each of 40 minutes. You have to do the maths 1 section that is compulsory for anybody that sits the exam. And you then have to choose from 2 other sections. If you're applying for engineering, the 2 other sections would be physics and maths 2. There is also a biology and chemistry section within this exam, but this exam is also for natural science subjects and other subjects. So make sure you choose the right 2 sections to do for engineering. Strongly recommend revising topics from GCSE and A level, as you will be doing this exam at the start of year 13. So that is where the bulk of your knowledge and a bulk of these question sort of basis will come from. This exam a year or so ago was originally the NGAR, which was also a very similar exam and also multiple choice. All of the NGAR past exam questions and past papers are still available online, and these are very useful study resources as the question types are very, very similar. And I would really recommend doing those past example papers. I think some key exam techniques to sort of focus when doing these papers is sort of identifying the key concepts, exactly what you're trying to do in that question, draw diagrams if you need to. And I think a big part of this exam is it's very, very time constrained. So whenever you're practicing questions, whether that's past NGAR papers, I would really strongly recommend at least trying to do so under time conditions because during the exam you will find time very tight and you want to try and practice trying to do as much as you can in a limited amount of time. So there are lots of support materials online, and again, as I've said, I would really recommend using NGAR past paper questions for revision. And a lot of these links to the questions we have included in those posters that we sent out to you earlier in the week, but they should also very easily be available online. My apologies, I realised I did not move on to the next slide, but That was just sort of the bit that I was talking about on the ESAT. And the next bit that we're going to go on to is looking at the interviews. So the interviews can differ a lot, depending on which college you apply to. Some interviews might be in person, so you'd be required to come into Cambridge. Some are still going on online from COVID. Some colleges might have 2 interviews, some might only have 1. Some colleges might also have a pre-interview exam that you sit when you sort of come down to Cambridge. You have to do an exam before your interview. So I definitely have a look at what your requirement would be and make sure you know what you're doing, because it will vary slightly college to college. So the main whole sort of process of an interview is fairly similar. The idea is trying to replicate a Cambridge style supervision. And they'll probably ask you a couple questions about yourself, sort of trying to find out a bit more about you and why you want to study engineering. But the majority of the interview will really focus on your physics, engineering, and math problem solving skills. So expect about a couple questions about yourself, and then the rest of the interview will be mainly focused on tackling some problems. I think the main thing to think about is don't worry if you can't do the question. They are not looking to see whether you get the right or the wrong answer. They're trying to understand how you work through a problem and how you think through a problem. So it's really, really important that you try and express your thought process throughout the questions, even if it's not entirely correct, because the interviewers can then understand what you're thinking, and they will help you along the way to try and get further in the question. But they can't do that if they don't know what ideas are already going through your head. So I would definitely sort of try and do some mock interviews beforehand. Try and just solve questions out loud, whether that's just with a parent or with a teacher. Practice sort of thinking out loud. Interviews in person, you might have paper and pen so they can see what you're working on. But me, for example, my interview was online at the time. I didn't have any sort of online whiteboard. So anything that I wrote down on a piece of paper in front of me, the interviews couldn't see. So anything I wanted them to know, I had to say out loud to them, because otherwise they didn't know what I was thinking. So it's really, really important that you try and stay as calm as you can, although I know that can be difficult under the stress of an interview, and try and communicate yourself as effectively as possible. The whole interview is an opportunity to show your passion for engineering, show how your brain thinks and how you would tackle a problem, even if you don't completely understand it, and that's okay. So the final little bit that I'm going to have a little look at is the course structure of engineering at Cambridge. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, it's slightly different to other universities in that you do not apply straight away for a specific specialisation. Your first 2 years, which is known as Part 1, engineering, is a general engineering course. So you will have modules in mechanics, structures, materials, fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, electrical, information, maths. And you will do several labs throughout the year which relate to each of these modules, and it will be related to the work that's covered in the lectures. And that will be part of your coursework, and you also have other coursework throughout your first 2 years, for example, engineering drawing, doing some CAD, doing some coding work on Python and C++, and also your sort of big second year project will be the industrial design project, which is sort of working in teams to design a robot. And your first year, as I've written there, sort of counts 0% towards your final bachelor's degree. Your second year counts towards 30%, and your third year counts towards 70%. So your third and fourth year are known as Part 2. In your third year, you will then, from your third year onwards, you'll begin specialising. So you get to pick the modules that you want to take. In third year, you will pick 10 modules, and in fourth year, you will pick 8. You will again have labs and coursework relation to each of the modules. And in your fourth year, you will have half sort of exam work, and you'll also spend a lot of your year doing your project, your main fourth year project. It's also a requirement throughout your first few years to undertake some industrial experience. should be a minimum of 6 weeks. And at the end of your 4th year, you will graduate with a BA and an MEng in engineering, and the MEng in engineering will be in whatever specialization you chose at the end. So there is, of course, more information and much more detailed information on the Cambridge Engineering website, which I've linked there, and was also part of the document that you got sent out earlier in the week regarding the course structure of engineering. So I hope you all found that useful. And I think we'll now sort of move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar. So we'll start looking through some of your questions. Of course, keep submitting them in and we'll do our best to try and answer them. Of course, just a sort of quick PSA from us, like all of our advice is completely based on us as students. We unfortunately won't be able to answer some more admin or admissions related questions, as we wouldn't want to pass on incorrect information to you all. But we will do our best to try and answer as much as we can based on our experience of engineering at Cambridge so far. So I'll just pass on to Rohan.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a bunch of questions coming, guys. So thank you very much for submitting them. If you remember, the link is on the email we sent, and I think also in the chat. So if you want to submit some questions based on the presentation you just saw, or any you can think of, our time in Cambridge, the degree, anything like that, like do put them in, and we'll try our best to answer them as well as we can. So one question that pops up a lot is about further maths. So someone's asked, do I need to take further maths A-level to do engineering at Cambridge? It's a really good question. Maybe Elisha, you want to help out with that question?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't take further maths, which is probably why I feel like it'd be good for me to speak on it. I think two main things. Firstly, if you still have the option to transfer over to further maths, like let's say your A level or whatever you're studying right now, does further maths in 1 year instead of doing further maths with maths combined, then I do advise, like genuinely, I'm begging you, please switch. It will make the start easier, a lot easier. However, the second point is that whether or not you do further maths doesn't necessarily affect how you do in the end, especially first year and as you progress, because they do make sure to teach you everything. So there will be a difference at the start, but if you make up in your mind that you're going to make up that difference, especially if you prioritize the summer before coming to Cambridge, then I think things won't actually be as bad as you think. Like, yes, people may be a bit better at like differentiating or whatever at the start, but like eventually it makes no difference in the long run.
Yeah, great. So someone else asked about what's this question? Sorry. So someone else asked about English language requirements. That's a good question. I think I would say just look that up, Google it. The department has some advice for their English language requirements on their website. Another question, do you get general engineering qualification if you choose certain modules? And does your degree title change? Danish?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So your degree title will change after your 3rd year once you specialize. But yes, it is possible to still get a general engineering qualifications depending on what modules you take. You don't have to opt in for mechanical, electrical, aerospace, or information. You can also just get a general qualification. It is possible, yeah.
Nice. Another question that's come in is there opportunity to take language or different modules that are not specifically engineering? I mean, I can talk a bit about the language. So yeah, the department has a languages service, and every year you're able to study Mandarin, Japanese, Spanish, French, sign language, and German. and you can do that alongside your engineering course. Sometimes it is offered in the credit. So yeah, there is plenty of place to learn languages. Modules that are not specifically engineering. I think we do some business modules. Addy, I think you might be best to answer this.
Yeah, sure. So, as Kriti mentioned, in third year you do 10 modules, and you can pick a maximum of 2 business modules. So, just to give you an example, I'm doing business economics and modeling risk. And then in fourth year, you can do, I think, up to 3 business modules. So, they give you sort of a different perspective outside the engineering course. So, it's quite useful in that way.
Cool. Another question, does Cambridge help you find industrial engineering placements? Is anyone good to answer this one? Maybe Kriti
This one.
or Danish?
So we basically, there's a team designated, so the industrial placement team. And so I think there's like 2 people that basically send you weekly emails, I think, basically just advertising opportunities. There's also what's called a choice database, which is just like a really long website, and you can like filter out internship opportunities based off like what you want to do. So there's like some chemical, some aero, some electrical, and then also location based. So there's just a lot of opportunities. So you just have to keep an eye out for it. But there's definitely people there to help you. You can reach out to the office and they'll give you like CV advice and also offer like interview prep.
Nice. So another question just now, can you still do Chem-Eng modules as part of the general engineering degree? I'm not sure how that's changed for the new years.
I think Chem Eng is its own subject, so you can't you can no longer transfer between the 2, I think, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. Someone else just asked, will uni help you secure internships during your degree? Yes, they will. It's actually a requirement. So I think maybe briefly mentioned in the presentation, but during either your first or second summer, you will have to do 6 weeks of industrial experience. And there are people in the department that help you with that. There's also the university careers service that can help you with that. Cambridge University Engineering Society helps you with that, so putting you in contact with all sorts of companies and things. So there's plenty of help that is available for everyone. Someone asked, how's the woman to male ratio in engineering generally?
I think our outreach officer from the department says it's around 25% women, but I'm not entirely sure if that's a very accurate number. But it's definitely less women, and you can see it in colleges as well. So if it's like a big issue for you, you can always apply to women-only colleges. And there's just a lot of support. There's a Women in Engineering Society, not to advertise, but it's a really good community, and you get to just meet a lot of like people that are also in like a really male-dominated field. So
Yeah. Kriti, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I'd say there is obviously like a very obvious sort of male dominated industry. I mean, you could sort of see it from our webinar as well. But yeah, there are sort of things like the Women in Engineering Society and things like CUES, where sort of we've got some tickets for the International Women's Day formal coming up. So there are sort of ways for you to meet more women engineers, and it's still a really lovely community despite sort of being a more male dominated degree.
Yep. Another question, sorry, Kriti, is it possible to email out the PowerPoint?
Yes, so the PowerPoint and the recording of this webinar will all get sent out to you. So if you missed anything in the Q&A or during the presentation, everything will get sent out.
Great. Someone's asking, what supercurriculars did you do? And were they small things or were they large projects over the summer? I assume this is meant for, I think, applications when you talk about supercurriculars. Does anyone want to take that question?
I don't mind. I think it's a tough question. I mean, using me as an example, I went to a school where we didn't do EPQ. So during that, I did my own personal project. So I built like a robotic car because I was really interested in F1. So I modeled traction control, launch control, DRS, different systems on F1 cars. On like a robotic car I built with Arduino. So I did that and I talked about that in my personal statement and I was asked about it in my interview as well. I made a society, an engineering society, and I just got Cambridge engineers along to give talks. Those were two. I can't think of anything else if anyone else wants to add anything.
I can sort of say, I think one of the things that I did is, so I applied for electrical engineering, all of the other universities I applied to as well. So one of the things I did was I got on an Arduino starter kit, which wasn't like super technical projects to do, but there were I think about 15 sort of small projects you could do with breadboard, lots of components, and using C+ code. So it was a good chance to sort of understand a few bits of coding and building circuits and sort of just gain simple skills like problem solving, troubleshooting, and a little bit with working with electronics. So it was something I could talk about in my personal statement. And didn't actually get asked about it in my Cambridge interview, but I did get asked about it in my interview with Imperial. So
Danish, or Elisha, any additions to that? Because it's quite a popular question.
So I didn't really do any sort of like a personal project, but there are a lot of universities that offer summer schools for students, like engineering summer schools. That's one of the ones I took part in. They could be residential summer schools. You apply to them around halfway through year 12. You get a taster with some lectures. You do some problem solving. You can do some short projects as well. My entire summer school was actually all online. So this was by the University of Surrey. It's completely free. And there's also some smaller firms that offer work experience placements. Simply all you have to do is just create a CV, send it over to the companies. These are obviously unpaid, but they offer 5 days worth of experience when it comes to, for example, robotics. Leonardo is one of the big engineering defense firms that actually offer work experience for students. So those are two main methods. And also there's a whole resources section on the Cambridge engineering subject page where it gives you all the resources to learn more about engineering. So that's a good place to look at as well.
Yeah, I might just give my take as well. Obviously, we're not saying this like a checklist, like you have to do this and this and this. I didn't have any work experience on applying. I just kind of wrote about what I was passionate about. They want to see curiosity. Engineers are problem solvers at the end of the day, and so anything you can think of that maybe you've done something like that might be interesting to talk about. It might get asked in the interview. That stuff is always helpful. You don't have to get into reading just because someone online told you to add a book to your section. So another question is, do GCSE grades matter?
I don't mind answering. So the time that me and Quitty did GCSEs, we didn't actually do GCSEs, so we got teacher grades. So, I mean, I got 6 9s, and I got like 2 7s in English, literature, English language. Yeah, those two. So you can probably tell I'm not great with English. So my main focus was STEM. So I don't think it matters. I did well in my A levels, and that's what they really care about. Is like a passion towards engineering. Your English skills, your geography skills aren't as relevant, I would say. So I mean, as long as you get decent grades in the subjects you're applying for and the related subjects, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Just to add on, like it's not that important, at least at Cambridge. I think Oxford might look at it a bit more. I would probably use myself as an example for this, where I only got 3 9s. So honestly, the only thing that you should do is apply and give it your best. So someone's asked, do you have suggestions of books or maybe problem-solving resources that can help?
I think online there are lists of like reading lists. If you just Google that, I think there's around like 20 books. Like obviously don't read them all. Just like pick ones that sound interesting. Or like even just pick like a chapter or something. And then there's Isaac Physics. I think they just do a lot of like physics problems, and also I think I want to study engineering. That's what I use to study for my ENGA. Um, it covers a lot of like questions that like you haven't done before in like A levels maybe, but then it really lets you like problem solve and like think about like how you could do it. It kind of like replicates like what could come up in an interview. So I found that really useful.
Also, sort of not books relating to the NGAR, but for in terms of books for your personal statement, I'd say if you want to put something like a book in your personal statement, make sure it's something you're actually interested in or something that sort of links in with engineering and what you're actually passionate about. Don't just put say that you read this book because you feel like you have to. I think I had when I sort of started writing my personal statement, I'd had this book in my personal statement that I'd read, but by the end of it, I got rid of it because I realized it didn't really fit with anything else I'd written about in my personal statement, and it was just sort of in there for the sake of being there.
And just to add on to that, the reading list is basically open to the public. So if you think about all the students that are applying to Cambridge, they'll all have probably looked at this reading list. So what you don't want to do is just throw in a book into your personal statement, because the people reading your personal statement will probably know that you just got that off the reading list. So if you could like somehow tie that into like your interests or like work experience that you've done or a project, then that would make more sense to whoever's reading your personal statement rather than just throwing it in there.
Elisha, did you have a point to add? I saw a little movement when we
No,
asked.
I was just gonna shout out like Isaac Physics as well. To be fair, like they had like two. I'm not sure if they still have them on there, so I may need to double check. But two like £1 books on just problem solving, and like it was quite simple. They just took you for examples like how to do it well, and like I felt that talking about it not only helped like kind of link in with like the Cambridge teaching approach, I guess in a sense, but then also just like helps my problem solving. That's quite nice.
Yeah, great answers. YouTube videos also exist, people's experiences, people solving problems, things like that. There's a lot of great resources online you can always look at.
So, sort of one other thing, if I could just add, relating to Isaac Physics, something that I remember I did, and I think they still do, is this like senior physics challenge, that you can sign up, and it's free, I'm pretty sure, and you just get a lot of questions that you can sort of solve, and I think it's over a period of a number of weeks. And you sort of get a certificate at the end of it, depending on how many questions you answered throughout the whole thing. So if that's something you want to get involved in, just have a look on Isaac Physics. There, I think the applications for it are open, and you can sign up to something like that as well.
Amazing. So next question that is coming up a bit is kind of, is Cambridge a lot of coding? Will it be better if we kind of learn how to use Python or maybe C++ before applying? That's a good question. Any anyone want to take that? Elisha?
I'll take it. I think it's best for me to speak also because I haven't passed into the point where I'm specializing yet. So like everything that I've gone through, you will all eventually go through before like getting to like pick where you really want to go. I'd say it's not actually that much coding, but I would advise learning Python and C++ before, and because two of our major project work, three actually, one in first year and two in second year, involve either Python or C++. So like simply just having a foundational knowledge would do a lot of good.
I would also say like I came into all of that not having really used Python or C++. The thing with Python in your first year is like the first part of your Python is just learning how to use Python. So you will slowly pick it up. And sort of similar with when you sort of start doing C++. Of course, I know it would have probably helped a bit if I had a bit more background on it, but there's plenty of people that have never used it before. This is the first time that they're getting into it, and it's perfectly doable. All of the work that they sort of start you off with is based on them thinking that you know nothing, because there are people that haven't used it before. So everyone sort of starts off at the same level of work before it sort of moves up.
Yeah. Essentially, most of the course pretends like we don't know any of this before. The maths course starts by introducing what an imaginary number is. The Python course starts by introducing what a variable is. Of course, it is very helpful to know these things beforehand, and I'm sure most of you do, but it does assume no prior knowledge if you are worried about that. So the next question, is the Cambridge interview online or in person? I think this one varies depending on the college. So there's a college system for applications. So I think at least Trinity, where I'm from, it's in person. I'm not sure about the
John's
others.
is also in person.
Sydney is online.
Yeah, so that,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. So yeah, so sort of like what I mentioned in the presentation, it very much varies on college, whether you have it in person, online, whether you've one interview or two. I know some of the colleges that do it in person also have a pre-interview exam. So it really depends on the college that you've applied for.
Yeah. I think that information will be on your college's website, or if you're not sure, you can maybe email the Department of Engineering or something. So someone else has asked, what do you personally think is the best thing about studying engineering at Cambridge? One nice question. Addy?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for me, I think there's two key things. The fact that it's general, it lets you kind of explore all of the aspects of engineering before you specialize, compared to other universities like Imperial. So like Rohan mentioned, he started with mechanical and now he's doing electrical. So I think that's the key thing. And I think when you go into your careers and you kind of grow in them, you go into management, and all systems need like mechanical aspects, electrical aspects, software aspects. So having an understanding of everything is really important. And the second thing is also related to careers. It's the fact that engineering is such a logical degree. It teaches you really how to approach problems, how to think through them. And that's needed in anything from management to like any engineering jobs to finance to consulting. So it's a really good start for the rest of your life.
Yeah, does someone else want to give their opinion on engineering at Cambridge?
Yeah, sure. I would say, yeah, the most important part is the general course. When I was applying all the universities I applied to was doing mechanical engineering, thinking that's what I wanted to do in the future. But now I'm, completely taking a U-turn and specializing in information and computer engineering. What's good is like they make you do everything for 2 years, which really gives you, a depth to all the subjects. And even if you're not sure, you can end up specializing in different subjects. For example, you can do aerospace engineering for your bachelor's, but then if you realize you want to switch to civil engineering, you can get the Master of Engineering in civil engineering. So you can sort of really get two contrasting degrees of if you want. So that's, I would say, one of the highlights of the course.
Yeah. Again, it's just that point of we get to do 2 years of everything. Yeah, so Adi said, yeah, so I did apply to mechanical coming in and kind of having done 2 years of engineering, studying electronics and thermofluids and all of this other stuff. I ended up picking electrical as my specialization because I enjoyed it a lot more and I had a lot of fun with building some of the stuff. So someone's asked, what's your social life at Cambridge / an engineering student? Um, I don't know what the preconception is, but does someone want to talk about their social life?
I feel like you can definitely still have a social life. It is a very busy degree, but so is every degree at Cambridge. And there's so much you can get involved in. Even the engineering society, like we do a lot of committee socials and nice dinners and things. And there's so many other societies you can get involved in. And I think like with engineering and with any degree at Cambridge, it is a lot of work, but you need to find time for yourself and time to take a break and spend some time with your friends and do something that isn't working. And it's definitely possible to do. I think it can be difficult to sort of get out of being able to work, but I think I've definitely had, at least I think I've had a social life um, while studying engineering. And yeah, I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah. University is a place where a lot of these things called societies exist. So while lectures and stuff happen, on the week, during the week, luckily engineering is not a course that has Saturday lectures. That does exist. Uh, yeah, it's a great place to socialize. There's lots of things happening, and the degree doesn't take up your whole time, so you are free to do other things. Someone asked, is it helpful to learn CAD software before applying?
No, it's not helpful. Just like Rohan said for Python, you're also taught how to use CAD within the first year. Although it might, I'd say, could help if that's something you're interested in mentioning in your personal statement. That could be of use, but there's no need to learn CAD before you start uni. There are a lot of helpful guides and instructions to say you are working with SolidWorks at Cambridge in your first term.
Yeah. So CAD is taught from the beginning, so don't worry about it too much. But if you're already thinking about doing CAD and you are just in year 12, then have a go at it. Maybe that's something fun you can talk about. So someone asked, how did you choose your college, and what do you like about them now? If you now that you're there. So I mean, we all go to different colleges here in this call. So maybe Chrissy, you can talk a bit about Sydney first.
So I think the way I picked my college is I sort of looked at a few of them online and I found like 3 or 4 that I thought looked quite nice. I came to Cambridge with my parents and we came round and had a look at around 3 or 4 colleges. And I think I realised I didn't really want to be in a massive, massive college. I quite wanted to be in the centre of Cambridge, and when I came to see Sydney, I really loved how central it was. And I loved like the size of it, how easy it was to get to everything. And now I'm really, really glad I chose it. The community at Sydney is really lovely. And I have to say it is a bonus, but Sydney is right opposite the Sainsbury's. So if it's 9:45 in the evening and you need a snack, there is still 15 minutes till Sainsbury's closes, and it's right next to me. So that has definitely been a bonus, and I have loved having that. It's also only about a 15-minute walk from department, so I'm someone who is terrified of cycling and will never cycle throughout my entire time at Cambridge. So I wanted a college that was walkable from department. So that has been really great. And I think I also just liked how close it is to a lot of other colleges and to the centre of Cambridge, just to go on like walks where you don't have to go very, very far. So I think, yeah, that's all why I liked being at Sydney.
Addy, you want to talk about why you picked Trinity?
Yeah, sure. So I think Trin is like one of the largest colleges. It's got like more than 100. I don't know the exact number of had, but it's got more than 100 people in the year. So it just means you can meet people from lots of different subjects. It's also got like the largest cohort of engineers, so 30 people approximately per year. So that's quite good because you can ask lots of people for help. Those are two big reasons. Also, the facilities at Trinity, it's got about everything you could need because it's quite rich. So there's a gym, there's like badminton courts, tennis courts, and lots of different clubs and societies which the college subsidizes. So I think it's just a good pick if you want to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, great. Elisha, any info about why you chose to go to Girton?
Yeah, I didn't actually choose Girton. I chose an open application. Because I can't. I would just be happy if I got in, and like wherever God wanted to take me out, I'd be fine with it. Girton was, to be fair, no. After arriving here, I do quite like it. I'd say the people are nice, and like I feel like Girton. Well, I should give some context at least. Girton's a bit further out than like most other colleges, so you will be cycling basically every day unless you want to take bus, which I don't recommend. But essentially, because it's a bit further out, like a lot of the people that are there like more often, like, and it has quite a nice community feel, I think. And also the sports facilities are quite good you do, if you do have interest in that sort of thing. Just if you do want to choose Girton, watch out for the accommodation prices. Don't get sniped. And yeah, that's the only thing I'd say. No, but nice. Girton is nice.
Nice. Alina, any insight into why you chose John's, or maybe you didn't choose John's?
So for me, one of the biggest things was location. So I wanted to be quite close to engineering. So mine's also just a 15-minute walk. And then also just the size of like the college. So like I knew I wanted to be in like a bigger college. So I think we have like 160 maybe per year. So it's really easy to like always meet new people, even if they're just in your year and you just haven't seen them around. I'd definitely recommend like the open days. I think they host them in the summer. They're extremely useful. You get to just like tour colleges and then just like get a feel for like what they actually are, because you can look at as many pictures online, but you don't really know how they are like in person. Also, if you're just in Cambridge a lot of the time, you can just go into a college and say like you're thinking of applying, and then they'll just like let you in, and you could just like walk around. So definitely, like if you have a chance, I'd recommend visiting.
Danish, any trains of thought for keys or
Yeah,
Gonville keys?
so I initially applied to Gonville and Keys College, and so when I applied, we didn't really have any open days because of COVID, but there's a lot of information available on individual college websites. And one thing that's quite helpful is the admissions process. So overall, the admissions process is very much the same for all 31 colleges, but some of them do differ. Some of them make you do pre-reading before the interview or take a test before the interview. So it really depends on what your strengths are. Are you better at performing at tests, or are you better at interviews? That's also a consideration you can take when it comes to applying to different colleges. And yeah, CUES is one of the richer colleges, so they do provide more financial support to the students through various grants. So that's also one of the areas I considered. Apart from that, I think you obviously have location. It's central. Check out the accommodation, whether it's an old college or modern college, and also you can check out what the cohort sizes are in each college. I don't think that should make much of a difference. I think those are the main aspects when it comes to applying to the college, I'd say.
And yeah, just my insight into that. So I picked Trinity because they seemed to do well in exams. It was a large college, which I preferred, and that meant there were a lot of engineering fellows. These are like kind of like the professors and stuff that reside in the colleges. And I am going to have to mention that I did apply to Trinity because it's like super rich, and so stuff like laundry's free, accommodation is relatively cheap, and yeah, as Addy said, it's got a lot of facilities. But some colleges do have nicer rooms. Some colleges are closer to the sports center if you're planning on doing a lot of sport, or closer to like other places in Cambridge. So if you do want to mark that out, every college is unique. I've not met anyone that doesn't like the college they applied to, or maybe they got pulled to a college and they don't like it anymore. So it's not the end of the world because we all share the same department. So
Yeah, that is like one other thing I just want to say. No matter what college you end up with, everyone has their lectures all together in the engineering department. All of your in first and second year, your supervisions are organised by your college, but in third and fourth, it's all organised by the department. So no matter what college you end up at, you're going to have the same education.
yeah. Someone else asked, are you free to specialize in whatever field of engineering, regardless what you put on your application? Yeah, you can specialize. So in third year, you pick 10 modules, any 10 modules you want, and that's your specialization. Basically, you can do 10 from different areas, but you probably don't want to. So, you do 6 electrical, maybe 2 business, maybe 2 information, and yeah, you are free to make that choice. It doesn't matter what you put for application. So someone asked, how do terms and breaks work in Cambridge engineering? Term time and break time, and I guess summer as well. Someone want to take that question? Elena?
So we normally start quite late. So this year we started October 8th. And then the term is 8 weeks, which is also very short. But it's very intense during the 8 weeks. But then you get 6 weeks off for holiday. And then another 8 weeks, and then another 6 weeks off, and then you start Easter term, which is like 4 weeks of lectures, I think, and then 2 weeks for like study leave and exams. And then I think summer is around like 12 to 14 weeks. So it's very long. You get a lot of like breaks, but during the 8 weeks, it's a lot of work. But then you have a lot of like downtime afterwards. So compromise.
Yeah, you're going to be going to uni later than everyone else, and you can have a month off for Christmas, well, Christmas time, or winter holidays, sorry. And yeah, there's a lot. There's just three 8-week terms.
Yeah, just another thing in terms of like holidays and breaks and things with a lot of colleges at Cambridge. When you move out for the holidays, you do have to move out all of your things as well. So one of the good things about Cambridge is for your entire degree, you will get accommodation. So you don't have to go out and find your own accommodation through a landlord or external resources. You will be given accommodation the entire time you're here. But most likely you will have to empty out your room over holidays. You can pay to stay over holidays. I know a lot of international students choose to stay over holidays because they don't go home all the time. And even some students, I know, for example, at Sydney for your third and fourth year, we have the option to stay over the holidays during the Easter holidays coming up now because third and fourth year your exams are a bit earlier, so you don't have to deal with the hassle of moving out. But yeah, that is also something I would mention.
Yeah, a really good point. I actually didn't take into account while everyone else in the UK kind of worries about all student accommodation. I'm going to say most colleges in Cambridge. I can't speak for all of them, but I'm pretty sure most do just give you accommodation for all 4 years if you need that. Someone asked, is it possible to visit on days other than open days? Yeah, Christy.
I would say probably if you're worried at all, when I was visiting colleges, it was just after COVID. So I just sort of sent a quick email in about a week or so before I wanted to go, just to make sure that the college was okay with me coming to visit. But it should be fine. But yeah, if you're unsure, feel free to email the college.
And someone asked, is cycling a common form of transport? I don't cycle, I walk everywhere, so maybe someone want to talk about cycling?
Yeah, I can speak about that. I feel like as you may have been able to tell, it purely depends on how centric you are. Um, like if you're in a very central college, um, then you won't have much need cycling unless like you're going out, like let's say you're going to, I don't know, West Cambridge or you're going to any of the sports facilities, because they tend to be a bit more on the outskirts. But other than that, like I feel like you shouldn't have to worry if you can't cycle already in most cases. And if you do have a case where like you want to go to a bit of a college further out, there are still public transport systems in place. Just I personally don't recommend them. That doesn't actually mean they're terrible.
Yeah. So Cambridge is a very biking city. It's a very small city that I think a lot of people don't realize before they come here as well. Um, I think someone asked how far is Trinity College from the department? Maybe about 10-15 minute walk. I don't know what that looks like on a bike, but and Trinity sits in the middle of Cambridge. The engineering department's kind of on the south, and then if that's 15 minutes, then you could draw a little circle, and then that's Cambridge. Someone asked, what CAD software do you use? Alina, do you know the answer? Don't know what it is these days.
We just use SolidWorks. They update it every year, but it'll just be like SolidWorks 2023, and then next year 2024, 2025. But it's SolidWorks, and they'll give you like the license for it, and then there's like an opportunity for you to like download onto your computer. But I think it takes up a lot of storage, so I wasn't actually able to do that. But there's like tons of computers in the department that just have all the software that you need downloaded. So most of the CAD you'll do will just be in department, so you don't have to worry about downloading anything. But yeah, SolidWorks.
Yeah. Someone asked, can you specialize from first year? No, I don't think you can.
I
So
think the earliest, sorry. I think the earliest you can really specialize is the third term of second year, where you get to pick like 2 modules. But they're quite limited, just like mechanical, aero, electrical. I think that's the earliest you could actually pick anything.
Just to be like the only I think specialization of engineering that's separate is chemical engineering, which is now its own course. Other than that, everything else comes under the general engineering course.
Yeah. It sounds like the people that are interested in specializing straight away, going straight into whatever it is you love to do, I would suggest there does exist student societies, kind of like Full Boo Racing, Eco Racing, Space Flight. These are a lot of societies that do exist. So, if you do want to hit first term and immediately do something quite specific, you are welcome to do that in those student teams. I think there's probably information just if you Google it, like what's available. So someone says, Are there any cons to Cambridge or engineering?
I think one fact that I don't know if it's true, but one fact I've heard is we do the least amount of labs to get an engineering degree. So a lot of like the labs we do are like very similar to like A-level labs, I think, or like physics labs, where like they've set up a problem for you and then you just go and you complete it and then you leave. But then you also do like more like longer projects, which are more fun. But we do have a lot of these like short 2-hour labs, and then you just go, you do it, and then you leave. Which like I'm not a huge fan of because it sometimes it relates to what you learn in lectures, but sometimes you're just really tired. You just go, you just do it, and then you leave, and then you're not really sure if you've actually learned anything. So I'm not the biggest fan of those, but with like the long extended projects, those are really fun.
Yeah, I would also like say that compared to some other engineering courses, the first couple years of the Cambridge engineering course is very theoretical. I don't necessarily would say that that's a disadvantage. I think you do get a wider sort of knowledge of different types of engineering, but you don't really get into like proper project work until sort of the project you do in second year, and then I guess your main projects in third and fourth year.
Yep, Danish, did you say something for a second?
Yeah, I was gonna just kind of link it back to one of the questions I was asked earlier about whether we specialize in the first year or not. So I'll say that's one of the cons. There are some students who enter this university, completely set on what they want to specialize in. But, say for example, someone is set on doing electrical engineering, but then they still have to study aerospace, mechanical, civil in the first 2 years, even though they don't want to. I guess that's, it's still helpful, but some people, want to study electrical from first year straight on.
Yeah. Okay. So someone's asked, how do I pick the college? Is it after I get accepted into Cambridge, or do I have to choose that beforehand? So there's two choices. You either make a specific application beforehand to a college, in which case your interviews are done at that college, or you think you put in a open application. And Elisha, do you know how that works?
Yeah. So basically, when you choose to apply, you can choose to apply to a specific college, or you do open. At which point, when Cambridge like finally gets like going through everybody's like responses and admissions, they will pull you to a certain college, meaning like they direct you to that admissions process of that college, and from there you proceed with that as your college. So you either apply open and get pulled, or apply specifically and you go through that admissions process. Granted, though, there is still a chance that if you don't, let's say, I don't know, you apply to Emmanuel College, and they set like high grades, because, well, it's always high grades at Cambridge. If you miss it, you can still get repulled in summer, which is where like essentially second chance opportunities happen for those that weren't able to like meet the like very specific grades that they were set.
Yeah. I hope that answers the question. So someone asked, for engineering, are the exams mainly written, or are you also examined on projects? So it depends on the year, but Alina, yeah.
For first year, your final grade is out of 900, I think, and you have 4 papers. Each paper is 200. So that adds up to 800, and then you have 100 extra points which come from like labs. But these labs are just like if you show up, you get the marks, and then some are like more performance based, like the longer projects and the lab reports will be how good the quality is. I'm not sure what it is in second year, but I definitely should know, but I don't.
So I think in second year it's sort of the same, but so in second year you have 8 exams. And I think the labs and coursework is slightly more of a percentage than it was in first year. And I think it sort of just increases every year. So in third year you have 2 projects that you do in Easter, and they're weighted slightly more than they were in like your coursework is weighted slightly more than it was in second year. And then Rohan or Dan, if you can give more insight into fourth year.
Yeah. So yeah, I think so. It is mainly written based on your question. And so that's the first 3 years. That's the BA. The MEng is a little different in that we do either exams or coursework for half of it. So that's your modules, and we do 8 modules, and that can be 4 exams, 4 courseworks. It's up to you how to pick. And the other one is your master's project. So that one's more of a year-long project, which is your master's project, and then it's taken into account with your modules to get your final grade. Someone asked, how's the diversity culture in Cambridge? Anyone want to take that question?
I guess I'd say there's a lot of cultural societies that you can get involved in. For example, like Indiasort, Faxort, like any sort of culture, any interest, there is probably a society for it. If that's sort of what you're referring to, like even like I know there's also like religion societies, if or just cultural societies if you're not particularly religious. Anyone else want to sort of give a bit more into that?
Yeah, there's just
I think
I,
not just
sorry,
student societies, colleges do quite a lot as well. Colleges have yeah. Carry on, it's fine.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, like, yeah, so there's a society for every culture, every religion, and they are quite large. So yeah, definitely diversity is a big thing in Cambridge. So were you guys confident in the fact you were getting into Cambridge, or was it unexpected? At least for me, I was kind of shocked. I thought these guys were joking. Like, how could they give me an offer? No, I'm joking. Yeah, it was very unexpected. Does anyone else have any points on that?
It was quite unexpected for me as well because I remember after I completed my ANG, I was crying because I thought it went so badly, and then like a few weeks later, like I got like a invitation for an interview. So it definitely just shows you that like they don't weight it purely just off your like ANGA results. It'll be a mixture of like your personal statement, your ANGA, and just like other things you've sent them in your application. So like if something goes really badly, like there's definitely still a chance for you to get an interview or an offer. So it's not like don't panic like I did.
Yeah, no, that is definitely something I'd say because you do get to find out your NGOS score sort of afterwards, like after offer day. And I think one of the things I realized is I didn't get like the highest mark possible on the NGAR. Like, it's not the end of the world if one sort of part of it doesn't go as well as you want. Everything is weighted sort of alongside each other, the interview, your personal statement, and the ESAT that you'll sit. There is not necessarily one thing that will be the be all end all if something doesn't go quite as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on that, so during like my interview, it was all online. So I only had one interviewer, and you can get quite phased when your interview is like typing during the interview and you're answering. So don't worry about it at all. Because I remember coming out of both my interviews thinking that the interviewers weren't really listening to me. But they were apparently. So don't worry about it. They've done it a million times. So yeah, just like just focus on your answer, I guess, during the interview, because they do need to take notes. So don't worry about that either.
Yeah. So kind of two questions back to back here is there a Freshers Week? Is there any social activities upon joining to get to know your year? I'm not the greatest to answer this because I joined during COVID for our Freshers Week. So yeah, Alina, sorry.
So I think it's about like 2 days before you actually start your lectures. That's when Freshers Week is held. And then there's like a Freshers Fair. So there's just like hundreds of like societies that just gather in like a big park, and everyone's got like a stall, and they try to get you to sign up to their mailing list. So CUES will be there, CUES will be there, and then just there'll be a tent for sports societies, and then one for like hobbies or like political societies or like cultural societies, and then like subject societies. And then there's free food, a lot of free stuff. Would definitely recommend going. And then there's also like college organized stuff, so you'll have to go to like workshops, and then just meeting like the other engineers in your college. And then there's like clubbing events and more like other social stuff.
Yeah, I would also say like every college is different, but so for example, Sydney, we all came a week before Freshers Week actually started and just sort of had like a week long of Sydney related workshops and getting to know everyone in Sydney. So that is very college specific.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I forgot to mention, some colleges do offer some sort of like an access, it's sort of like an access week where they invite some students to come in earlier than others before university begins, just to get them settled, helping them get used to Cambridge life before term begins. So there are like, measures to, settle you in if that's an issue as well. Some colleges do offer that, Convent Keys does.
Yeah, exactly as Danish said, maybe this is another thing to consider when you're picking your college. How tight-knit does the college seem to be? Does everyone get along well, or is it like so large that you don't really see each other? So yeah, so some colleges do hold fresher events. The department, specifically us, Engineering Society, holds some fresher events to get to know people. So yeah, I definitely recommend going to as many of those as you can. A lot of free pizza. So someone asked, I joined the program late. Can I have access to the slides or recordings? Yeah, the slides and recording will be sent around, so don't worry. We have about 10 minutes of questions left, so if anything's just on the top of your mind, do ask quickly. The questions was, I think the link's in the chat and also emailed around previously. It's the same form. Someone asked, I haven't been offered any work experience or in engineering. Any advice on how to get some? Do I need it? Adi, maybe? Are you able to? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I actually didn't mention this earlier, and I remembered when Danish mentioned it, but I did do some work experience. Again, it was during COVID, so it was online. But it really wasn't that helpful. Just because you're at a company for like 2 or 3 days, there's so many like security things, they can't really give you much information. So although saying that you've done some work experience might look good, in reality, I didn't gain much from my work experience. I think just showing a passion for the subject, like doing personal projects or doing societies. A couple of things that I forgot to mention earlier as well was I did something called the Gold Crest, and that's where you can do projects and you can submit it and you get an award, and the award's called Gold Crest. So I did some there. And so just doing different projects and showing your passion for the subject is, I think, more important than writing a random company's name on your CV.
Yeah, but it's not required. It's not like it's not required. I didn't do it, but if you can, it's probably really helpful to do it. Someone keeps asking, what did you get in your A levels? Shall we answer that question?
I think the possibly more helpful would be like what the typical A-level offer is. I think they sort of is about the same for everybody. So I think I got an offer of 2 A stars and an A for any of physics, maths, or further maths. So as long as I met that, it's all good.
The offer does change depending on the college. They sort of like factorize everything into it, how your interview performance was, how you performed in the ENGA. So if you didn't perform that well in the interview, but they still want to give you your offer, they want to offer you a conditional, they will sort of, give you higher requirements for grades. So some of them can even specify what you require the A star in. So for me, they required me to get an A star in further maths or physics. It can be different for other colleges as well. It really depends on like your overall offer. It's like they take everything into consideration.
Yeah. Just for completeness, mine was like 3 A stars and an A. Maybe they were super harsh on me. Again, it just depends who you are, what the college is, what year it is. Like, I wouldn't stick too fast to these rules because sometimes it might be an A star and 2 A's and something like that. So yeah, 5 minutes left. Someone says, does doing is an EPQ beneficial? That's the extended project qualification.
I don't know. I didn't do one, so I guess someone else who have done is probably more helpful.
I
Go on, Gritty.
No, I also didn't do one. So if you did one, go for it.
Okay, well, so I went to Wilson's. I don't know if any of you here from Wilson's. So my year was the first year they stopped doing EPQs. And I don't know why they stopped doing it, but they clearly didn't see a benefit in it. I think maybe it was a monetary aspect, but I don't think there's much benefit in it. If your school does it, then you should do it. But otherwise, you can do like personal projects and the Gold Quest, the things I mentioned before. I think they carry equal weight, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd say like even if your school does do it, it's not necessary that you have to. My school did offer it, I chose not to. I think if you genuinely have something that you want to do your EPQ on that sort of, I guess, reflects your interest in engineering, go for it because it can be something that you can use as your sort of version of a personal project, and that's great. But I say don't do it if like you're doing it because you think you need to have it, but you don't really have a sort of purpose behind doing it and like an interest in something you want to do, because it will obviously be a lot of work and a lot of time and effort, and it's not entirely necessary. For me, I didn't really have something that I knew I wanted to do it on, so I wanted to focus more on my like doing the A level part of it, the actual A levels rather than my EPQ.
Yeah, and yeah, I hope that answers your question. I didn't do one, but it's obviously a great avenue for something you're passionate about to follow along and include and talk about if you want to. So someone asked, does doing IB instead of A levels matter? I don't think it should. Alina?
I did IB.
Yeah.
The thing with IB is they can give you like, because it's graded out of 45. So my offer was a 43, 777, I think, which is really high. I was really stressed when I got that offer. But I think I enjoyed IB, which might be a bit crazy to say. I don't know. It's just I did IB economics, and I'm seeing a lot of like correlation with what I've learned in IB with like the businessy side of like engineering we do, that a lot of like the A levels people haven't seen. But then again, some of the A level further maths content goes a bit more beyond like IB maths AAHL. But you catch on really quickly, and because you're surrounded by everyone else, they're more than willing to like help you get up to speed with everything. But I think it's pretty much equal. I think for physics, for the optional topic, I did engineering. So I did some of the stuff that the A-level people didn't cover, but it was just very minor like differences, and people just get up to speed really quickly, so there really isn't a difference.
Okay, so just because of time, we are going to have to wrap up here. So just final points. A reminder that this is student advice, and so do your research on a lot of this stuff when you're submitting your application. For any further questions, I think you can email, if you had a college question, you can email the colleges. If you had a question about the course or anything, there's the department website, which are usually quite helpful. Chrissy, final, yeah.
Just sort of like say thank you all for coming. I hope you all found it useful, and all the other sort of resources we sent you throughout the week. I hope you found all of that useful. We will try and send you a recording of this webinar as soon as possible. Apologies if it might just be a little bit late. Thank you all so much for joining.